She smiled, brushed a stray hair from my forehead, and led me downstairs on the leash attached to my collar. I spent the rest of the day like that. I prepared lunch for her, refilled her tea, and listened as she gave me a steady stream of instructions. How to sit without wrinkling the skirt, how to step lightly, how to keep my hands poised. It wasn't fear that made me obey, it was a growing desire to do well, to please her, to master this strange training. That night I was sent to bed at 9, as usual, the day's lessons still swirling in my head. The next morning, before dressing me in the second new outfit, she had chosen a similar dress trimmed in blue instead of pink. She delivered my Sunday discipline. It wasn't violent, but it was firm, a ritual reminder that rules mattered. On Sunday evening, still dressed in the blue trim gown, she had me kneel at her feet. This time she didn't scold or correct. Instead, she looked me directly in the eyes and said, "You've worked hard. You've been graceful. You've been sweet. Remember this feeling. This is what it means to be trained and to excel." Then she dismissed me for bed. That night I dreamed of everything I had been through, the strange blend of servitude, teaching and transformation, and of Mistress Karen's piercing eyes watching me learn. I worked hard around the house all week. My new clothes stayed in the wardrobe until the next weekend, when I would be allowed to train again. By the following Friday, Mistress Helen and Mistress Elizabeth returned home, and, before I knew it, Mistress Karen had gone back to college to finish her course. The house felt quieter without her, but the lessons she drilled into me, posture, discipline, attention to detail, remained. For the first time, I realized that under the layers of lace and control, she'd been shaping something more than my appearance. She'd been shaping me. I was continually getting into trouble with both Mistress Helen and Mistress Elizabeth. Nothing I did seemed right anymore. My housework was sloppy. I ironed creases in the wrong places. The showers weren't as spotless as they expected. Even my regular Sunday discipline was no longer enough. The corrections became more frequent, and Mistress Helen in particular became harsher in her lessons. For the first time, she used a different implement in training, not the familiar riding crop, but a heavier whip meant to leave an impression. It wasn't just the marks on my legs that lasted, it was the shock of knowing she thought it necessary. Later, she tried to talk to me about what had gone wrong, but at first I refused to answer. My silence only deepened the problem. One morning, after she released me from bed, Mistress Helen sat me down and said in a quiet but firm voice, "Tell me what's really happening, sissy. Why are you distracted? Why are you performing so poorly?" I burst into tears. I hadn't wanted to, but the words spilled out. I miss Mistress Karen. I thought she would be furious. After all, I belonged to her, but she only nodded, as if she'd expected it. "I thought it might be something like that," she said. Then she surprised me even more. "I'm willing to consider transferring your training to Mistress Karen if she agrees. Elizabeth and I want time together, and perhaps Karen can take you further." For the first time, I glimpsed the bond between Mistress Helen and Mistress Elizabeth. Their time away together suddenly made sense. Mistress Elizabeth, for her part, showed a different side. One afternoon, while Helen was away, she sat me down on the floor beside her chair. She rested a hand on my head and spoke softly. "You're a good little girl at heart. I could tell from the beginning you were drawn to Mistress Karen." Her words stung and soothed at once. She wasn't punishing me. She was evaluating me. She spoke about getting closer to Karen, about preparing me for a deeper level of obedience and trust. Instead of physical intimacy, she devised a symbolic ritual for me to perform, a ceremony of kneeling, bowing, and reciting vows about loyalty and humility. She guided me through it with her hands on my shoulders, pressing my forehead to the floor until I spoke each line without faltering. It was humiliating and electrifying all at once, the closest I had ever been to Mistress Elizabeth's approval. By the end of the ritual, my hands were trembling, my heart pounding, my face wet with tears. She smiled and said, "Good girl. You're learning what it takes to serve at a higher level." Later, when Mistress Helen returned, I was made to kneel between them while they discussed my progress. Elizabeth described, in detail, how I had performed during the devotion exercise. I blushed at every word but could tell they were pleased. Finally, Mistress Helen said, "I've spoken to Mistress Karen. She's willing to take over your training, but there are conditions. You'll need to think carefully before you commit yourself." I sat on the floor, heart racing. The possibility of being handed over to Mistress Karen filled me with both dread and excitement. Whatever the conditions were, I knew my life was about to change again. Mistress Helen sat me down one evening with a tone I had never heard before. This was not a correction or a scolding. This was an announcement. She said, slowly and clearly, "If Mistress Karen is going to take responsibility for you, there are some conditions you must understand." Her words sent a shiver down my spine. I had dreamed of belonging to Mistress Karen, but now it sounded less like a dream and more like a contract. The first condition stunned me. "You would no longer be part-time," she said. "If you go to Mistress Karen, you will be living as our little sissy full-time, in front of other people, not just in this house. You will need to learn to carry yourself in public, to be seen, to be recognized." I swallowed hard. The thought of being presented to the world this way both thrilled and frightened me. The second condition was practical, but no less intimidating. "You will also need to work more," she continued. "You will contribute to your own keep, especially since a new life means a new wardrobe. Mistress Karen will decide where and when you work." The third condition was the one that made my heart race. Mistress Helen's voice softened. "Finally, Karen will want you to consider going further in your transformation. She believes a true sissy should also develop a feminine figure. But any medical decisions will be yours alone. This is something you two would discuss slowly at leisure." I had thought about it before, secretly. Did I want to cross that line? I liked being a boy who dressed and behaved as a girl. It was something I would not agree to lightly. Mistress Helen looked into my eyes. "If these conditions seem acceptable, I will tell Mistress Karen. But she does not want to rush you. She thinks you need time to decide. That's why I've arranged for you to spend a month with a trusted friend of ours, Mistress Helga. She'll give you the right environment to think clearly." Her tone made it clear this was not a punishment. It was a crossroads. "Do you agree to do this, sissy?" My voice came out quiet, but certain. "Yes, mistress. I do." And that was that. In 1 week, I would be taken to Mistress Helga's place. A month to decide the rest of my life. We arrived back from Mistress Helga's around lunchtime on Saturday. On the drive home, Mistress Helen told me quietly that Mistress Karen would be home that evening, and she would want to hear my decision. It felt like a drumroll. If I was going to agree to her conditions, I would need to present myself exactly as she had instructed. Mistress Karen had typed out precise directions and given them to Mistress Helen to pass on to me. "You are to spend the rest of the day until 8 p.m. in your room, sissy. If you intend to commit yourself to Mistress Karen's care, follow these instructions exactly. Mistress Helga has provided the things you'll need. If you require assistance, Mistress Elizabeth and I will check on you in an hour." I already knew my answer. My time with Mistress Karen months ago was still fresh in my mind. I wanted to be with her, to serve her, to learn from her. This wasn't fear anymore, it was resolve. When Mistress Helen came up an hour later, I dropped to my knees, hands trembling but heart steady. "Would you and Mistress Elizabeth help me prepare?" I asked. She smiled, a warm, almost motherly smile. "I will, my darling sissy." I love you, Mistress Helen," I blurted out. "I love you too," she said, brushing my cheek like she used to when I was a child. Mistress Helga had packed a special wardrobe for my presentation, a new dress, new lingerie, delicate stockings, and, for the first time, a beautiful pair of white ankle boots with 3-inch heels. This was not about punishment now, it was a ritual of transformation. Before helping me get ready, Mistress Helen sat down and told me things I had never understood before. Her voice was calm but serious. She explained that after my father left, she and Mistress Elizabeth became close friends and discovered a shared interest in female leadership and guidance. They joined a national network of women exploring empowerment and structured mentorship. At first, my mother feared I might grow up like my father. But she soon saw a gentle, receptive side in me and began to believe I might thrive under a different kind of guidance. She and Mistress Elizabeth decided to explore, carefully and gradually, whether I might respond to a feminized, service-oriented role. They did not force me. They introduced it subtly, testing my reactions. By age 12, the foundation was set. By 14, after a difficult time at school, the plan moved forward. Mistress Karen had known of this because her mother, Mistress Elizabeth, wanted her daughter to grow strong and independent, to be a leader rather than be controlled by someone else. Listening on my knees, I felt my whole past snap into focus. This wasn't a sudden trap. It was a long path I had been walking, sometimes unknowingly, but always with my own consent at each step. I would not have done this, Mistress Helen said gently, if you had shown no interest. But you did. And that is why we are here today, sissy. She paused. Nothing you say now can change what will happen later today. But is there anything you wish to say? I looked up at her, calm. Mistress, thank you for telling me. Thank you for looking after me so well. I love you and I will always love you. I am happy with what you did. Her eyes softened. She kissed my forehead, then told me to stand and undress so she could help me prepare for the evening, the night I would stand before Mistress Karen and declare my decision. That Saturday evening felt like the end of one life and the beginning of another. Mistress Helen helped me prepare exactly as Mistress Karen's instructions had described. Each step was deliberate. Special clothing, meticulous grooming, every detail chosen to create the image of a poised young woman in training rather than a servant. The first item was a new fitted undergarment to ensure posture and deportment. Then came a long-line bra, stockings, and a suspender belt. It was my first time in stockings. The sensation was strange and exciting, but Mistress Helen's expression was calm and encouraging, like a teacher pleased with her pupil. I love to see you enjoying the process, she said softly as she brushed my hair. Small, removable breast forms were slipped into the bra to give me a beginner's outline. She explained that, later, more permanent pieces could be worn for longer periods. Then came the ankle boots with tiny locks at the straps, so I could not slip them off easily. They had a modest heel, but, to me, they felt like stilts. She set my hair beautifully, sprayed it into place, added false lashes, extended my nails, and painted them a bright, playful pink to match my dress. Perfume on my wrists, behind my ears, and at the tops of my thighs finished the look. Mistress Karen wants you to walk like a lady tonight. This narrow petticoat will restrict your stride and help train your steps, Mistress Helen explained. Finally came the dress itself. As the fabric slid down over my body, it flared and rustled with layers of lace. Clip-on earrings, a gold choker, and a glimpse of myself in the mirror completed the transformation. What I saw was no longer a boy playing dress-up. With better deportment and grooming, I could pass in public. Mistress Helen took my hand and led me around the room, helping me find balance in the new boots. The restricted petticoat forced me into smaller, neater steps, exactly what she wanted. An hour later the summons came. I practiced my curtsy one last time. Mistress Helen led me downstairs with a narrow gold metal collar locked above the choker and a matching gold-colored leash. In the living room stood Mistress Karen and 3 other senior women, Helga, Serena, Helen, and Elizabeth, all dressed in sleek leather. I dropped into my curtsy and then knelt as instructed. Concentrate on me, sissy. That's why you're here. You've earned yourself extra training this week. What do you say? Thank you, mistress. She smiled. Good girl. I understand you have accepted my conditions. Sign here. A large document was placed before me. Hands trembling, I signed without reading, knowing my mind was already made up. Mistress Karen slid a simple ring onto my finger, a ceremonial symbol of my decision to live under her guidance. It was short and simple, but for me it felt monumental. I served drinks to each of the women. They complimented my appearance, my posture, my service. I felt both humbled and elated. Mistress Karen explained the new arrangements. Mistress Helga and Mistress Serena would be moving in. A dedicated training studio would be built in the cellar. Mistress Karen would move into the room next to mine. And Mistress Serena would be in charge of household discipline to ensure my training progressed. After a couple of hours, Mistress Karen sent me to bed. As a special reward, she allowed Mistress Serena to stay with me as a chaperone for the night. She explained that my hood and hand restraints could be left off so that I could rest more comfortably. Mistress Serena changed into soft nightwear of her own and, rather than punishment or humiliation, simply gave me a reassuring hug. It felt less like being trapped and more like being formally initiated into a new way of living, a way I had, in truth, already chosen. That night, Mistress Serena treated me almost like a child being soothed after a long, overwhelming day of training. Instead of harshness, there was gentleness. She spoke in a low, almost maternal tone and gave me a warm, sweet drink from a bottle she had brought with her, a ritual she had learnt from Mistress Helga to help calm and center trainees before sleep. There, she murmured as I drank. Does baby feel better now? I felt strangely comforted. For months my world had been about rules, presentation, and posture. Now I was experiencing another kind of lesson, learning to let go and trust. I hugged her, whispered my thanks, and, for the first time in days, drifted off to sleep in someone's arms rather than alone in restraints. The following morning, Mistress Serena continued my training in regression discipline. I was kept in my soft outfit and told to stay in bed while she explained a new exercise. Rather than physical chores or drills, this was about psychological submission, remaining still, following instructions, and allowing myself to be looked after. It was confronting, but also strangely calming. She reminded me, again and again, that all of this was consensual and temporary, a way to teach humility, patience, and service before I began the next stage of my feminization training. Later, after she had let me get up and wash, she dressed me in baby-style clothes and a small harness. I was made to crawl, not walk, into the lounge where Mistress Helen and Mistress Elizabeth were waiting. It was their way of making me practice poise, self-control, and obedience even in a regressed role. Although I was outwardly dressed as a baby girl, the real lesson was about discipline and care, learning how to yield, how to listen, how to build the inner calm that the mistresses expected. By the afternoon, I understood that this was not just about costumes. It was a system designed to test how far I was willing to go in accepting the identity and responsibilities I had asked for. The praise I received from Mistress Helen and Mistress Elizabeth for staying calm, for following instructions, for looking the part, felt like a reward as powerful as any new dress or pair of shoes.